Before we begin this story, a warning, not the kind that comes at the end, the kind that belongs at the beginning, before you have settled in, before you think you know where this is going. What you are about to hear is not just one man's story. It is four men's story. And behind all four of them, one woman, one child, and a plan so calculated it funded the construction of an entire house. Pay attention, because the men in this story didn't. Jack was 45 years old, and he had built his life carefully, not accidentally, not easily, carefully, the way a man builds something he intends to last, brick by brick, decision by decision, with the long view always in mind. He had a wife, Agnes, 44 years old, cool and calm and steady in the way of a woman who has learned that most things worth having require patience. They had been married for 19 years. 3 children, teenagers now, complicated and loud and entirely worth it. A home that felt like one. A life that, by any honest measure, was good. Jack was also a senior manager at a mid-sized company in Johannesburg, and Lucia was his secretary, 33 years old, sharp, efficient, the kind of presence that makes an office run smoothly, the person who knows where everything is, who anticipates what is needed before it is asked for, who manages the invisible architecture of a busy professional's day. She was also, though Jack had never allowed himself to think about it directly, a woman who had decided that Jack was exactly what she needed, not for love, for something more practical than love. The end-of-year office party arrived the way it always does, with the accumulated relief of a long year finally releasing, the particular looseness that comes when colleagues step outside the formal boundaries of the workplace and allow themselves to simply be people for one evening. Jack drank more than he should have. This is not an excuse. It is simply what happened. The details of the evening blurred at the edges, the music too loud, the laughter too easy, the night moving faster than he could track it, and then a hotel room, morning light, the specific, sickening clarity of a man who understands immediately and completely what he has done. Lucia was already awake. She looked entirely unsurprised. Jack drove home in a silence that had weight to it. He showered for a long time. He sat at the breakfast table with his family, Agnes pouring coffee, the kids arguing about something irrelevant, the ordinary beautiful noise of the life he had built. And he felt the distance between who he was at that table and what he had done the night before, like a physical thing. He told himself it would not happen again. He told himself no one needed to know. He told himself it was one night, one mistake, and mistakes did not have to define a man. He was wrong about the last part. 9 months later, Lucia walked into his office and closed the door behind her. She sat down across from him, with the composed expression of a woman conducting a business meeting, and she told him she had given birth to a baby boy. She said the child was his. She said she would be filing for maintenance. Jack felt the floor tilt beneath him. He thought immediately of Agnes, of the promise his wife had made, quietly, clearly, without drama, early in their marriage. If you ever have a child outside this marriage, we are done. No second chances. No conversations. Done. Agnes did not make empty promises. Jack had always known that. He thought of his 3 children, of the house, of 19 years. He looked at Lucia across the desk, and he made a calculation that men in his position have been making since the beginning of time. A calculation that is always, always wrong, but which feels in the moment like the only available option. He would pay, quietly, privately, without telling Agnes, without telling anyone. He would handle it. The maintenance payments began, monthly, transferred from an account Agnes did not monitor. Enough to keep Lucia satisfied, enough to keep the silence intact. Jack added a new layer of performance to his daily life. The performance of a man with nothing to hide. He was attentive at home, present with his children, steady with Agnes, and every month, quietly, the money left his account. This went on for 3 years. It was an ordinary Thursday afternoon. Lucia had stepped away from her desk, A rare occurrence, a brief absence, nothing significant. Jack passed her workstation on his way back from a meeting. He was not snooping. He was not investigating. He was simply walking past, and his eyes caught a document on her desk. The way eyes catch things they were not meant to see. A letter. Official looking. Legal formatting. The words DNA paternity test, visible at the top. He stopped. He looked closer. The child's name on the document was the same child he had been paying maintenance for. The same boy. 3 years old now, but the name on the application was not his. Jack stood very still at Lucia's empty desk for a moment. Then he went back to his office, closed the door, and sat down. His mind was doing something he had not asked it to do. Pulling threads, following logic, arriving at a conclusion he did not want to reach. Someone else had requested a DNA test for this child, which meant someone else believed they might be the father, which meant Jack opened his laptop. His hands were very steady, the way hands get steady when the rest of you is anything but. He started investigating. He was careful, patient. The same careful patience he had applied to building his career, his home, his life. What he found took 2 weeks to piece together. It was worse than he had imagined. There were 3 other men. 3 other men who, like Jack, had found themselves in Lucia's orbit at a moment of vulnerability. 3 other men who had received the same visit, the same claim, the same quietly delivered ultimatum. 3 other men who, for their own reasons, fear, shame, the protection of marriages or reputations, or simply the path of least resistance, had been paying, monthly, quietly, for the same child. Jack sat with that information for a long time. 4 men, 1 child, 3 years of payments. He did the mathematics of it. What each of them had likely been paying, multiplied by the months, multiplied by 4 separate streams of income, flowing steadily toward one woman. And the number that emerged was not a small one. He thought about the house. He had heard, through the particular intelligence network of office gossip he had never paid much attention to, that Lucia had recently built a house, a nice one, in a good area. People had commented on it admiringly. Lucia is doing well for herself. Yes, she was. Jack requested a DNA test, not through Lucia, not through any channel she could monitor or intercept, privately, legally, through a certified laboratory. He obtained what he needed without Lucia's knowledge, the details of which he kept entirely to himself. He submitted the sample. He waited. The results arrived on a Tuesday morning. He opened the envelope alone in his car in the office parking lot. Before going inside, he read the result once. Then he sat back in his seat. Not the father. 3 words. Clinical. Absolute. Final. Not the father. 3 years of payments. 3 years of fear. 3 years of carrying the weight of a secret that had shaped every decision he made at home, every performance of normalcy, every carefully maintained distance from the truth, all of it, built on a lie she had told him before he had even thought to question it. Jack felt 2 things simultaneously. The first was relief, so sudden and so powerful it was almost physical, like a hand releasing a grip he had forgotten was there. The second was anger, the kind of anger that does not burn hot and fast, the kind that settles in cold and permanent and very, very clear. He found them. It took time, and it required discretion. But Jack was a man who understood how to move carefully when the situation required it. He reached out to each of them privately. The conversations were short. Each man, upon hearing what Jack had to say, went quiet in the particular way of someone who has just heard out loud what they had been half afraid to think privately. They agreed to meet. 4 men in a room, different ages, different backgrounds, different versions of the same story. A moment of weakness, a claim, a payment, a secret kept from the people who mattered most. They compared notes the way men do when they have finally stopped being ashamed long enough to be honest. The maintenance amounts, the dates, the details of how she had approached each of them, the specific language she had used. And it was, they discovered, almost identical across all 4 accounts. The same framing, the same quiet pressure, The same appeal to what they stood to lose. A practice script delivered to 4 different men over 3 years. Then came the DNA results. Each man had by now obtained his own. They laid them on the table. 4 tests, 4 results. Not the father. Not the father. Not the father. Not the father. The room was very quiet. And then one of the men said, almost to himself, "She built a house." Nobody laughed. The house was real. They confirmed it. A proper house, in a decent area. Construction completed approximately 18 months ago. Right in the middle of the period when all 4 maintenance payments were running simultaneously. 4 men's money. 1 roof. What happened next? The legal processes, the formal complaints, the recovery of funds, is its own story. One still unfolding at the time of this telling. But what matters here is what those 4 men felt sitting in that room. Relief. Yes. Each of them. The particular relief of a man who has been paying for a lie and has finally been released from it. But beneath the relief, something harder, because each of them had a wife at home, or a partner, or a family. Each of them had spent years managing a secret. Each of them had made a choice, in a moment of weakness, or in a moment of calculated avoidance, that had cost them something they could never fully recover: their peace of mind, their integrity, their relationship with the truth. Lucia had not created those weaknesses. She had simply found them, mapped them, and built a house on top of them. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, the child, a 3-year-old boy who had done nothing wrong, who had not asked to be born into this, who would one day be old enough to understand the circumstances of his arrival in the world. That, perhaps, was the heaviest thing of all. This story is not unique. That is the most important thing to understand about it. Jack is not unique. The other 3 men are not unique. Lucia is not unique. This is a pattern, a documented, deliberate, calculated pattern that has been quietly operating in the spaces where shame and fear and the desperate protection of reputation make men easy targets. The formula is consistent. Find a man with something to lose. Create a situation. Make a claim. Apply quiet pressure. Collect. The married man is the preferred target, not because married men are worse than other men, but because they are more afraid, more likely to pay without questioning, more likely to choose silence over verification, more likely to fund a house without ever seeing the foundation. To every man listening to this story, if you find yourself in a situation like Jack's, the most important thing you can do is the thing Jack waited 3 years to do: request the test. Not out of cruelty, not out of denial, but because the truth, whatever it is always better than the performance of a lie. And to every person who knows someone like Jack, someone carrying something heavy and secret and slowly destroying them from the inside, tell them what Jack eventually learned. The truth, even when it is devastating, sets you free. The lie, even when it is comfortable, builds someone else's house. Jack drove home that evening. He sat in his car in the driveway for a long time. Inside, Agnes was making dinner. The kids were arguing about something irrelevant, the ordinary beautiful noise of the life he had built. Still there, still intact, still waiting for him. He had not yet told her. Perhaps he never would, or perhaps the relief of finally knowing the truth would give him the courage to do the one thing he should have done at the very beginning: walk through the door and tell his wife everything.